I think that we have to look at each tax reversion opportunity independently,
Each year.
each year. And I think that, for good reason, the board has chosen not to do it in the past, and it may choose not to do it again in the future. But in this particular situation, given the number of properties involved, the amount of money involved, it would appear to be a very prudent decision. We have heard residents make comments in the past about properties that were bundled and sold to investment firms that let the properties go, that didn't do anything with them. So we know that a perfect solution is simply not just to let the properties go to public sale. So I think that given this particular situation with the limited number of properties and the financial aspect involved, that in this case, it's a prudent decision. Now, we've talked a lot about how we go about selling it, and I will not keep everybody with my thoughts on it, but I do understand that we're gonna talk about it at a later date.
Sure, absolutely. I know the motion was to purchase the properties. That number, that cost, for the record, is $18,423.32. One of the staff members in the treasurer's office had indicated that they suggested $100 to $200 in some additional fees that may have fallen on those properties in the time since this was published. They said there is no interest for March 31st, but there are some additional fees, $200 to $300. So we're at $18,423. I'm just gonna ask that we might specify specifically either acknowledging those fees, whatever they may be, or assign a dollar value. So I know we have a motion to purchase the properties. There is no additional interest, I was told, but there is some fees that they have that they've put on the property. So I don't know if that's an amendment to acknowledge
We
those
can amend
treasurer's
it just
fees.
to cover the fees that would be incurred to purchase the properties.
Yep. Is everybody, Mr. Capital?
Continue support.
I just want to say, I have to concur, I don't think we should be buying these properties. I think that there's a system in place through the state law that the county treasurer is engaged in selling these properties and foreclosing them, and I don't think we should be in the real estate business. And I've said that all along, even when Tony wanted to buy some of the properties. We're not done having this discussion. We're gonna have a discussion on who to sell it to, how much the price should be. It's gonna be a mess when we have that discussion. Clearly by even tonight, you're gonna have a neighbor that's gonna wanna come in at $12,000 and I think we have to sell it at a fair price to whoever that might be, not just the neighbor. If somebody comes in from out of town and wants to buy it, they're the highest person, that's what we have to do. But that's for later, but I don't think we should ever be in the business of real estate, and, that's not our prime directive, and leave it at that. Sell these let the process, somebody will buy it from the county, the neighbor wants to buy it from the county, there's a process for that. What we've started now is, we have a
There is no
process.
process for that, no.
Well, there is a process.
No.
The properties go to the county. The county can bundle them, not bundle them, if they want, if the neighbor, if I was the county treasurer and I had a piece of property like this, we've never had a piece of property that was really valuable like this shoreline property, ever, that's come to this board. It's always been
I would disagree.
these hodgepodge pieces, but they go to the county sells them, the neighbor at that time can bid on the properties if they want them. Now we're gonna get into this, neighbor wants to buy it for $12,000, but should we sell it to the other guy for $40,000? We're gonna have that discussion, and we don't need to, we can just let them go, and they can go to the county and buy them if they want. It's my opinion, and that'll be that.
Right.
And I understand it's probably gonna be 6-1 or 5-2, and
Would you like
So
a
be it.
roll call?
it doesn't matter.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'm torn. I mean, my wife has always been very good at buying and selling properties and homes and flipping them and things like that, and she's made remarks about some property. I think one of these, she's said before, this last one, the Shoreline and Ashland, she said multiple times that she'd like to buy that piece of property and do something with it, because you could see it's obviously a mess. So, I believe I believe all of this is a good investment, but I also believe that we should be in the business of the real estate. as government, we should be separate from that. I think that should go into free market, and I don't believe that we're a free market. So I think it's a good investment, but I can't vote for it. I just don't think that it should be
Understood.
something we should be involved
It,
in.
it's worth noting that a majority of the communities in Macomb County do participate and do purchase
Yeah.
their own land. So we're
I
by
agree.
no
I
means
know
plowing
that.
a new trail here.
No, I know
We're
that.
in the minority by not buying it, and I recognize in the past the board hasn't. And as I've said, there have been years when I think we've had some better shots. I know that there are neighbors who are excited over the possibility that these problems
Right.
could go away, and
Yep.
we do have a unique opportunity this particular year.
Like I said, my wife's never been wrong, and she thinks that's one of those is a good deal, so.
Well, that's what I said. I'm on the phone listening, and even tonight, the neighbor wants to buy it for $12,000. I will write a check right now for $20,000 to buy that property.
Yeah, I just don't think we should be doing it. I just have a philosophical
I think that
problem with it.
property is gonna go for somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 at the end of the day.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Caprell to purchase the 3 tax reversion properties available for the taxes, plus any additional fees that the treasurer's office has on those properties. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, board. I know we had a lot of discussion, deliberation. I respect that each of you are trying to do the right thing, and I think it's important that we recognize that. It's a difficult thing. We've never done it before, so it is something new. Next on the agenda, item G3. The property owner at 38014 Lakeshore has applied for a permit to construct a dock. Per our ordinance, this must be approved by the Board of Trustees after a review by the township engineer. Mr. Newmer has reviewed the project, and his recommendation is attached. The applicant has secured all necessary permits from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and the Army Corps of Engineers. I recommend approval of the proposed construction at 38014 Lakeshore.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, I wish I would have brought this forward sooner. I apologize, Mr. Newmer. I'm thinking, boy, he's sticking around. He must have something, so we should have moved this up on the agenda. Again, I apologize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Well, he gets paid by the hour, so he's just fine sitting over there.
All right, motion carries. We'll open up the floor now for
Well,
public
see, you
comment.
should have said something earlier. We would have moved you up.
We'll open up the floor for public comment. Comments can be about any subject, and we ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes in length.
Good evening, board members. William Bardell, 19-year resident taxpayer, new kid on the block. I just want to touch back on this last 2 issues ago. The only reason why anybody would want to buy these properties is just for the residents on each side of the property. That's the only reason. They get the first crack at it. If they don't buy it, they don't bite the hook. The bass don't jump on the hook. Then you sell it to the open market. But you're giving the people on the left side and the right side of this property the first crack at it to set up their horseshoe pit and their volleyball net. And of course, you have to work 8 to 4:30. And speaking of working 8 to 4:30, I noticed the town hall was shut down at 4 o'clock. What I would like to know is how much advance notice was the tax-paying residents given that the town hall was going to be shut down last Friday prior to 4:30 in the afternoon? And who authorized the shutdown of the town hall before quitting time of 4:30? Again, that goes with my 8 to 4:30 work times. And to facilitate all these things that we want to do in the township, we have to work 8 to 4:30. So what I'd like to know is who facilitated the early shutdown and how much advance notice were the residents given that we were going to have a shutdown at our township hall? Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is you may we got a little late Independence Day gift from our Oakland County 12 Towns Drain. we got dumped on, we got 183 million gallons, 183.3 million gallons of sewage dumped on us on July 8th. And they dumped from 2:07 a.m. to 7:20 a.m. That was our little 4th of July Independence Day gift we got. So they dumped sewage on us via the Red Run Drain. Needless to say, goes to Lake St. Clair. And we had a beach closing on Thursday. They reopened it at 3 o'clock on Friday. But prior to that, we had no rain, even though that's not an excuse, and we had beach closings, and we had that beach closing, and that was twice the E. coli level. On July 8th, our friends in Warren at the Nine Mile pumping station, they dumped 2.2 million gallons of sewage on us. And they dumped in our wonderful lake from 1:37 to 6:15 a.m. via the Clinton River, Red Run Drain to the Clinton River. So this is what we're up against. This is what we're up against. I would like to invite everybody to check out SaveLakeSt. or Save Lake St. Clair Facebook and get involved in our wonderful Lake St. Clair. We all love our lake, and we want to make it better for everybody to enjoy, us and our grandchildren, children, and grandchildren. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Hi again, Marshall Rosquin, resident. Thank you for answering my questions. I am a little disappointed that the people interested in these properties weren't here tonight, and that we don't have a means of securing their interest or having some sort of documented form or email, anything at a minimum saying that they would be interested in purchasing it. And then I say to the voters of the township, I'm running for trustee, and if you're interested in a representative that is not speculative with your tax dollars, that would be me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. Going back to one of the comments made by one of the people that talked first, I guess I'm a little disappointed that the township shut down the township offices from 12 p.m. last Friday. I fully expected that having done that at least more than 3 township employees or officials would have been present at the funeral. I'm disappointed that as official representatives of the township that nobody from the supervisor's office, either the supervisor or his deputy, nobody from the clerk's office, either the clerk or the deputy clerk, none of the supervisors of the water and sewer department, who were also closed down, none of the supervisors of the building department, who were also closed down, none of the people from assessing were present to represent the township residents and township employees in thanking Lieutenant Russell for his service and supporting his family in their time of sorrow. Shame on you guys. Shame on all of the township. Shame on you for setting it up so that they failed. Nobody went. Moving on to another thing. The last board meeting, we were talking, we went through the, we had the guys there from the financial guys, whatever you call them, that gave us our grading for the year. And I asked the question about the money that was borrowed, or that was lent, to the township fire department, and I made the statement that I thought it was around $500,000. And right away, I got all kinds of smirky looks from Mr. Witt and a couple other people. Oh, he don't know what he's talking about. And you promptly corrected me and said it was $137,000. Well, it was $137,000, but that was only for 2015. We got all of this year, 2016, that money, the fire department is operating in a deficit, and by the end of the year, it's going to approach 500,000 or more. So you know what? Again, we did not get an answer as to how they're planning on handling that in your audit. Didn't get a straight answer out of anybody. How are you going to make sure that the money gets repaid to the Township General Fund? Didn't get a straight answer out of anybody. So I'm going to ask the same thing. How are you going to make sure that the township gets the money back? Well, I'm going to suggest to the residents there's one way to make sure. Get rid of this board. That's how. Because it's never going to happen otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Servia, resident. Just a couple things. Going back to this Ashland Shoreline House, it's quite obvious to me looking at this. First off, the house across on the north side of Coleridge is 260 foot of lot depth. There's 50 feet that was split off to put a garage over there, which couldn't have been done unless it was going to be attached to this other property. It appears to me from the drawing here, it shows on the front lot line 153 feet. So I think at one time, that was a 153 foot lot. I built two houses on Shoreline, further north. All of those properties were originally platted at 145 by about, I forget exactly the number, but it had to be 1 acre in order for the health department to issue permits for septic field and a well on the same property. That was to the middle of the road. The road easement's 60 feet, so they're somewhat smaller than that now. So that said, I believe that what originally transpired, I'm speculating here, but I believe this house was there. They ran into financial trouble and they sold off a bunch of property here wrapping around their house. This gentleman told the people that, the lady that lived there, her children came before housing at least 2 or 3 times before they quit coming. And we were told at those meetings that the guy was lowballing them. They were willing to sell, but at a reasonable price. He was trying to get it too cheap and they wouldn't sell it. Why they haven't done anything prior to this and put it on the open market and try to get something back out of it, I don't know. But that said, there is a lot that's going to be 210 feet deep, and the buildable envelope will be with a 30-foot setback and 6 foot on the other side. You take 36 feet off of 73, and you got a 37-foot building envelope, which is a decent-sized house. Our building ordinance allows a house 24 foot wide. That's the minimum. But that said, just about 10 years ago, that lot across the street that's 72.5 feet, they came to housing, or the ZBA, and got a big-time variance. If you look at the aerial, the front of that house is only a few feet from the lot line. So there's more can be done there. That is a fairly valuable lot. Corner lots are always nice because you can have a side load garage. Makes a house appear much more appealable because you don't have a garage in front of the house. All right. So that takes care of that. Now, on the issue with the senior center, my memory isn't what it used to be, but I've been here a long time. I seem to remember Mr. Shore sitting over here and telling us that, bragging that we got that whole building built for $110,000. Now you're talking about $600,000 possibly for some renovations and some additions. I'll tell you the reason why that's that way. Because drive by any construction company and there's help wanted signs out there. There's probably 20% of the people that they need to perform the work that's available right now. People are begging for any warm body to come and work for them so they can take more of this work on. So if you're turning down 80% of the work that comes your way, you're going to get as much as you can for the 20%, that's left. That's why the prices are so high. Your estimates probably weren't that far off originally. So, you know, every year that you wait to do the rest of the work, the prices are actually probably gonna fall because there'll be more competition. Now that there's this big money to be made, people are jumping back in. I talked to a man that moved to North Carolina, took his whole crew there, and he just came back this building season because he sees the opportunity. Some of his men didn't come back as they said they were too old to do framing work. But there is an opportunity here. As you know, I built a house that took me a year to build because I couldn't get any help. I couldn't even get the people that did the last 2 basements for me to even give me a price for 2 months, and then it took them another month to get over there and do it. And it cost me twice what the last basement cost. So figure out how to do what you can for $225,000 and don't go crazy. Mr. Witt said something about breaking concrete. No matter what you do, if you're gonna abandon those bathrooms or if you're gonna use that same area, you're still gonna break the concrete. That's no big deal. It's not the end of the world. If you don't have contractors that can come up with something, then find new contractors. Because somebody can come up with something and figure out what you can do. And Mr. York is absolutely correct. I've been coming up here for 5 years talking, and 5 years ago you're talking about putting a vestibule on there. That was the main thing in the parking lot. You don't need an addition right now. Is it gonna be a shingle roof? If it is, it's not a big shakes to put a reverse gable on it later on if you're putting an addition on. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. There were a few questions from residents or audience members. In fact, the town hall or the township offices were shut down at noon on Friday. Tuesday was when we came back from the holiday. I had a discussion initially with some board members and staff members. I'd circulated a text message, which is probably the easiest way to kind of gauge in a quick format what everybody's opinion was. Had a conversation with a couple board members and again, talked to staff members, see what the impact was. I also looked at what other communities had done. What I realized was that there aren't a lot of examples to draw from, and I think that's probably a good thing. But one of the nearest or most recent examples would have been the untimely shooting death of one of the detectives in the Warren Police Department. So I looked into just exactly what Warren did during the time of Detective Wooter's funeral. And I learned that they did allow people to take time off for those who wanted to take the time off to attend the funeral. We felt that there was a little bit more of a challenge in doing that because many of our departments only have 1 or 2 people in them. So once somebody leaves the department, that department's closed and it's kind of difficult to go through that process. So we had a discussion internally on Tuesday after confirming with staff, department heads, what we could handle. We published it and posted it on Wednesday. And it was after conversation with, certainly notification of every board member and conversation from many of them, or majority of them. And we also believed it to be a sign of respect. I was not in town and unavailable to be at the funeral, but however, I did go to the funeral home, and I know several others expressed a similar concern of willingness to be able to maybe communicate with the family at the funeral home in a different way. Regarding the property sale, one resident had asked, why couldn't we have a document from showing the interest from neighbors? And again, that kind of was my initial response, but I was aware that not every board member was interested in pursuing that path. So I took a different approach, and that was to emphasize the potential market value of the properties so that the board wouldn't be in a position to make the decision based on maybe the neighbor coming here saying, yes, I want to buy it. That's not binding. We don't even own the property. You know, I'm not in a position to be able to say, okay, if we buy it, you must buy it. I don't think in this time frame I have a chance to tie someone's hands. So I did reach out to those residents. I know that one of them works a shift where they were not able to attend, so they indicated they wouldn't. I can't speak for the other 2. But I do know, I say, not only is there an interest, but I think we demonstrated a market value as well. Regarding the fire deficit, I don't remember the exact number, but the resident indicated that for 2015, the deficit was 137,000 in the form of this transfer of funds on a temporary or some limited basis from the general fund. There was a number approved in the 2016 budget. I believe it was 98,000 for my recollection. However, we indicated that as recent as the last budget amendment in 2015, we thought we were gonna have about a 236,000, I'm just going by memory,
Just about 200.
200,000 deficit, but the actual deficit came out to be 137. And the reason for that is because within that fire budget, it's a $5.3, $5.4 million budget. There are line items for various things, whether it be copier maintenance, and we say, okay, it's 5,000, and when we get to the end of the year, maybe it turned out to be 3,800. I'm just making up a number here. But the point is that typically when we close out the year, we find that there's a little bit of money in many of the line items. If we spend every amount in every line item, we expect 2016's deficit to be 98,000. But a conservative look at prior years tells us that we usually finish with less of a deficit than we might anticipate, or whatever that number is.
Is that including the loan?
No, that would be the loan, 98,000. And predominantly, if you recall, this board had discussed that, at least at this point, we are not back to 27, number one, but we were in prior years at 27. But we have hired firefighters, but those retirements, each of those retirements have come with a savings. So far, we've had one person retire. It resulted in a lieutenant leaving and a sergeant moving to a lieutenant, but we did not replace the sergeant because we negotiated in the last contract to go from 6 sergeants to 3. So we've backfilled that lieutenant that might have been in a 6-figure salary with all of the bonuses back to a firefighter that's coming in, even with all of the bonuses, probably at 50,000. So each of the retirements, as we've replaced some of those firefighters or hired additional firefighters, they've been at a much lower rate. So we're likely to be in a better position at the end of this year than we anticipate, but our estimate when we set our budget at the end of last year was a $98,000 deficit. The auditors had said it isn't really a loan because the way that the state asks us to identify it is different than that. If it's a loan, we acknowledge a deficit. If we acknowledge a deficit, we have to file a deficit reduction plan. So the auditors asked us to choose our words carefully. But one resident asked, how will those funds be repaid? And we did address that at our last meeting. What we had said was our current fee structure that we acknowledge, the general fund performs certain tasks on behalf of the water and sewer department and on behalf of the fire department. Things like payroll, collections, receivables, treasurer's office, et cetera, elections. For at least 6 years now, I'm going by memory, but we've charged an administrative fee to those other funds of $110,000. The auditors had suggested that if we choose to say in the future, once this millage gets in place and we've got a little bit more of a sound financial condition in the fire department, we could take the approach that we'll say instead of $110,000 for fire, we're gonna make it $125,000 as the administrative fee until such time as that $15,000 amount accumulates to equal the amount that we transferred from the general fund. That isn't a loan repayment, but clearly in the books, you could see that there were an additional amount charged to the fire department that would equal the amount that was transferred in. Then there was a question as to why the previous owners of the property at Ashland and Coleridge never sold. I certainly can't answer that, but what I learned through investigating this tax reversion process is that the treasurer's office informed me that the treasurer has the first lien. Your taxes are the first lien on your property. If you don't pay your taxes after 3 years, the treasurer has the right to foreclose. They don't always foreclose if the home is occupied, and we've discussed that on other properties. But in the case of a property that's vacant, they do have the authority and the legal right to foreclose. Now, let's just say that the scenario was the woman, for whatever reason, or the resident, for whatever reason, was unable to pay the taxes, and they were $12,000, and she owed $50,000 on her home, and it was valued at $200,000. Well, the mortgage company has the opportunity to pay those taxes or to become involved in that process. But if the mortgage, if for whatever reason, if they're upside down enough, or they're not interested, or for whatever reason, the mortgage company has the opportunity to basically walk away. So what I anticipate likely occurred with that property is that the debt that the owner had, combined with the $12,000 in taxes, could very well have been more than the property was worth once it deteriorated due to its vacancy and the garbage that's accumulated in the home. At that point, now the mortgage company has a decision to make as to whether or not they want to get involved. And if it's a loser for them, they say, you know what, we've been paying on this for years, we're paying to maintain it, let's just get out of it. I don't know that that's what's happened, but if there was a mortgage on the property, the mortgage company has some opportunity if there's enough value in the home for them. And I believe they just anticipated it wasn't worth it. So why it wasn't sold, I don't know, but my guess is there may have been too much debt on the property in comparison to what its true value is. So, I don't know, those are the answers I had to questions I wrote down. If I missed some, I apologize.
Just wanted to thank the firefighters for the service on Friday. It was truly a moving service, watching them ring the bell for the last time for Andrew Russell. You know, hearing his family speak about him, the eulogy that our firefighters gave, there was 2 of them that got up and spoke. You know, Andrew Russell's truly a man that'll be missed. When I started as a 21-year-old here, he was one of the first firefighters I met, and I was afraid of him because he's a big dude, but he was really nice. And it was when we started talking about the Run Like a Mother, because he did the drawing for of the woman for the race. So,
The t-shirts and
yeah,
logo.
the T-shirts and everything. So like you go from being like, whoa, this is an intimidating man, to doing something like that. So he'll definitely be missed, and I was grateful that I was able to be there.
Is there any other board comment?
I agree with Mr. Witt. It's a tragic loss for Lieutenant's family and for the township. And I agree with you, the ceremony was very fitting tribute to him. And I'm glad I was able to be there as well.
Is there any other board comment?
Motion to adjourn.
I've got a motion to adjourn. Is there support?
Support.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board members. Thank you for the time.
Who's that? Second. Who seconded?